It's primarily for pigs, pottery, quilts, anything country related. Original arts and crafts and food and vegetables. Of course, that's original too. And puppies and watermelons and anything you want to bring.
Ann White Scruggs, the originator of the Bell Buckle Country Fair. Tennessee Kaleidoscope at this annual celebration, where arts and crafts predominated, but the day's events also included a blacksmith demonstration,
Been married
contests,
52 years, and where are you from, sir? Now for the couple married the shortest.
music of all sorts, and the train going through the center of town. All of this typical of the lifestyle in the small town of Bell Buckle, Tennessee.
Bell Buckle has that type of environment. It's sort of a living arts and crafts community, and we go hand in hand with antiques and silversmithing and a lot of the natural things, vegetables, gardens, and things like that.
Bell Buckle itself is rather a small town, but it seems to me that the population today has doubled and tripled and much more than that.
Quadrupled, would you believe? We'll have, before the day is over, we'll have probably 20 to 30,000 people. We have 453 people in town, but of those 453, all are very, very active. You all have to work when you only have 400 people in town.
Are your artists all from the Bell Buckle area?
We have artists from this general region that sort of settled here because the buildings were old and needed to be redone, and the low overhead was the main thing that appealed to the craftsmen, where they could live in the shop and have the exposure that we have because of the Webb School and because of the walking horse industry and because of just beautiful rolling countryside. We've even snagged the National Quilt Convention. It's never been anywhere smaller than New York City, Chicago, New Orleans, and San Francisco. It's never been to Atlanta or Dallas or some of these large cities.
To go back to your country fair, the people that participate, what do they have to do in order to set up a booth?
They have to send an application. You can't just come and set up that day because we have too many people.
Do they have to meet other requirements? You pick and choose?
On this particular fair, we do not. On the Webb Arts and Crafts Fair in October, it's screened through slides and photographs. But this one, we decided that this should relate to the country folk, and it's very difficult sometimes for country folks to get slides of their work, and yet they're very talented too.
Could you tell me something of the work that you've done in art through the years? As I remember, our first conversation was back when the Nashville Artists Guild had a gallery on Union Street in Nashville, and you were the director.
That was 5th and Union. It was through the Nashville Artists Guild. I am a potter craftsman. I have been teaching the last 7 years in art at Webb School, and I came down to Bell Buckle to buy a couple of old buildings and see if you could really make your living in art. In this day and time of trying to meet expenses, it's very difficult to compete. And I'm still plugging along 7 years later in Bell Buckle, Tennessee. I am a potter. I graduated from MTSU finally after going to college all over the United States, I think. And I have 3 kids and 1 grandchild. I live in a big old Victorian house and am married to a musician. And I've found the place I want to be, and I'm doing what I want to do.
Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Ann White Scruggs, founder of the Bell Buckle Country Fair, which has been held on the 3rd Saturday in July for the past 7 years. This broadcast made possible with the joint support of the Tennessee Arts Commission, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Samuel W. Barkis. This is Lynn Folk.
First lesson of collecting is to have a focus, to pick an area, a place, a time, a subject, but some limitations. No one can collect everything of all periods, and that kind of indiscriminate collecting results in pack rats.
Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Wendell Garrett, editor and publisher of the magazine Antiques, with comments on pack rat collecting, how to avoid it, some fears experienced by beginning collectors, and the satisfaction enjoyed by those who overcome misconceptions in the field of collecting.
There is a severe misconception about this field that is good to touch on, and that is that there are young people who are frightened by the field, feeling that one has to be an expert to get into it. And that is not the case. Almost any person can become well-informed, can become terribly knowledgeable, can become an expert, not overnight, but in a reasonable length of time if they focus in collecting. First lesson of collecting is to have a focus, to pick an area, a place, a time, a subject, but some limitations. No one can collect everything of all periods, and that kind of indiscriminate collecting results in pack rats. Collecting has to have a sharp focus, and when one has that, by reading, by visiting museums, by visiting antique shops, by going to lectures and symposiums and forums, it's surprising how quickly one can become very, very well informed. And that, as an intellectual exercise, is the greatest satisfaction. That's the profit in collecting. It expands one's horizons and gives life another dimension. And that's the most exciting thing about this field. But I think it does frighten people off because they feel that they're intimidated by the knowledge of collectors.
Maybe when you start out, you don't know what you want to collect, so you collect a lot of different things, and then you begin to specialize. And I understand that as you progress, you always upgrade yourself in art or any kind of collecting.
Generally, upgrading happens, and I think that becomes a factor of expansion of knowledge, and that's what's good.
Antiques magazine covers a lot more than furniture. Can you tell me what are some of the most popular items that you've had in your magazine?
It's hard to say. Clearly, the major areas of collecting, that is furniture, silver, painting, ceramics, and glass, have been and will continue to be the most popular. But there are isolated areas that are still very popular. I'm told that doll collecting is one of the most vigorous areas collected in today. We don't do anything about dolls. Photography and vintage automobiles are another areas I don't touch. But these general areas of furniture, painting, silver, and ceramics and glass, textiles are the areas that we touch.
What are some of the subjects generating the most interest from your Southern readers?
It's always been a strong interest in American antiques in the South, largely because of the very acute interest in history in the South, so that the interest has been in American furniture in general, but also in Southern antiques and Southern heritage, Southern architecture. But I think it's an awareness that is stronger than one even finds in New England today.
The Southerners are very much interested in antiques, but I think a lot of them feel that they need to go to New England to find their antique pieces.
I think that's been because of the popularity and the abundance of New England antiques. It's only been in recent times that we've learned something about Southern antiques, Southern furniture, Southern silver, and so that this interest reflects sort of a traditional historical interest.
And silver is very popular, is it not?
Yet silver has taken a real bath recently in terms of sales. It's one of the slowest areas right now after the great push about 2 or 3 years ago. These things go through fads, so that they're fads in collecting just like they're fads in everything else. And this is why it should never be a field for investment, because it's hard to predict or to forecast these kind of rise in the tides of taste.
Wendell Garrett, editor and publisher of the magazine Antiques, when he was in Tennessee to deliver the Fitzgerald Lecture during the summer series of programs at the Monteagle Assembly, which is known as the Chautauqua of the South. Tennessee Kaleidoscope is made possible with the joint support of the Tennessee Arts Commission, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Samuel W. Barkis. This is Lynn Folk. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope. The Nubian Theater Company was established for the purpose of bringing the folklore of Africa and African America to audiences everywhere, with their lively dances, the stories, music, and the colorful costumes they wear. Entertaining, rich in history, and relating to others in sometimes unexpected ways. Listen now to two of the performers, Deborah Ferguson, accompanied by Uriah Hellion.
And from that time, there was not only song and music and dance in the world, but beautiful stories were also created. Long ago, in a Bombay village, two women on the same day gave birth at the same time. One to a boy child named Yin Yin, and the other to a beautiful girl child named Sira. And Sira and Yin Yin grew together and were inseparable. Their loyalty to one another knew no bounds.
We really enjoy what we do, and I think a lot of that comes because we make people happy, we make people smile, and they really feel good about themselves and about life without realizing it. A lot of times people who are interested in booking us, but say the audience is predominantly Caucasian or European, they wonder, well, how are they going to relate? Long ago, we crossed color lines. When we were at the World's Fair, when we performed at the World's Fair, we had left color lines behind because what we do, everyone can relate to, and we found at the World's Fair that we were able to cross handicap lines. We had a group of 30 people who were deaf. All of them were hearing impaired, and we had them on stage with us dancing and singing, and we didn't know they were deaf until the program was over. And so that just demonstrated to us, once again, that we have something very special to offer. And no matter who you are or where you are in life, you can react to it and respond to it and feel good about it. We're here from Memphis. We have a company that operates in Memphis, but our home base is Washington, D.C., but we're a national touring company. And so we have programs in Washington, in Baltimore, Maryland, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and since I moved to Memphis, in Memphis, Tennessee. And we auditioned and recruited additional members to the company from Memphis.
How many are in your company? I saw two of you perform today.
There's 6 of us, and then if we have larger productions, then we have affiliate artists that we work with on contract. So they're 6 to 8, depending on what our needs are.
You told some stories today, and you had the drum and the piano. And what are some of the other things that you do?
Another member of our company plays saxophone and flute, so we have more jazz offerings. We do Afro-American folklore. Today we taught African folklore, and we gave a sample, and since it was only the 2 of us, you didn't really get to see the theater company work in terms of acting, but the stories that we tell, we bring them alive through acting and creative dramatization and mime, and we just incorporate all the elements of music, song, and dance within each story. The story that we did, Drum Song, was created by a lady in Washington, D.C. by the name of Jonetta Barris for a production at the Kennedy Center last year, and it was done as a full-out performance. But we condensed it down and told it as a story today. And I wanted a chance to show off Uriah's expertise, because so often people think of us as, oh, you do African dance and African drumming, and they don't really see the other side of us. So we were trying to bring that out today.
And I heard you play the drums and the piano. Now, what else do you do?
Well, recently I've been dancing with the company, which is sort of latent, but it's coming out.
Do you make your own instruments, like your drum and all?
Well, I don't make my instruments, but we have someone that do make the instruments, and we're learning to make the instruments ourselves. You know, that's what we're trying to get into now.
Uriah Hellion and Deborah Ferguson with the Nubian Theater Company of Memphis and Washington. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts and the Tennessee Arts Commission. This is Lynn Folk.
What I always try to point out in the conferences is this, that it takes some talent, but also it takes some expertise in knowing what publishers expect. And then beyond that, it takes a lot of persistence.
For several years, John Warren Steen has conducted Christian Writers Workshops in Nashville. These annual 5-day sessions in July and also some 1-day winter seminars have drawn participants from many states. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with John Warren Steen, founding editor of Mature Living magazine, author of 4 books and many articles, who originated these workshops in order to share his ideas and those of other writers and publishers with both beginning and experienced authors.
When I came along, the colleges were not offering courses in creative writing as they are today. And I didn't know how to start or get training as a writer, but I just plunged in and started writing and sending things off. And I have thought, well, it'd be so much better if a person were prepared. And I've attended several conferences over the years and found them extremely helpful. And I decided, well, I would like to share some of my insights. And I started 5 years ago with the first Christian Writers Grand Ole Workshop, held on the campus of Belmont College here in Nashville, Tennessee. And these have attracted a great deal of attention. People have come from far away as Indianapolis, Indiana, or Miami, Florida, and it has attracted local Tennesseans, and several of the people who've come have had good luck in publishing afterwards, too.
You say they do come from all these different places. How do they get the word?
The word goes out in all of the writers' magazines. Each of the 3 major writers' magazines lists the conferences that will be held in the summer, and there are a lot of conferences held around the United States. This is the only one in this area of a conference similar to this.
It seems natural for Nashville since there are so many religious publication houses here.
This is what I've tried to capitalize on, and I've had editors and publishers from Broadman Press, from Abingdon Press, from Thomas Nelson Company, from the Benson Company, from Zondervan, from the Upper Room, which is also a publisher. And I've had these representatives each year, and they get to know writers, and they encourage the writers, and the people who attend get to know these people as actual personalities and people who have a heart, and not just a hard-hearted editor off in an ivory tower somewhere.
And they lecture to your writers group.
That's right. They're able to lecture, to answer questions. They're able, in some cases, to look over materials that are sent in advance. Now, one of the features of my Christian Writers Grand Ole Workshop is a contest. I have materials to come in advance, and I evaluate everything that comes in and have some other people to help me with these, and then we give prizes for the best in fiction and in nonfiction and short and longer works.
So when the people come, then they get a critique and they get practice in writing. What are the requirements for coming to these workshops? Do they have to have published previously?
No, there's not that requirement, because this workshop can be very helpful to a person who's just getting started and has never published anything before. The person has to be serious about wanting to write. And the application is sent in, and I look at it very carefully and decide if this will help that person. And most people are accepted. The word workshop means to actually do some things rather than just hear about them. So a little bit different from a conference, a workshop will major on the actual doing and actual writing.
You have sessions on all sorts of different subjects. I know that you've had some on creativity that you yourself have delivered.
Yes, I believe creativity is an important and often a misunderstood subject. It has nothing to do with IQ. Some of the smartest people in the world are not really creative because they just don't get around to doing it. And this is a part of motivation. You need to want to create something and then to put a lot of effort into doing it.
Author, minister, and consultant John Warren Steen. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts and the Tennessee Arts Commission. This is Lynn Folk.
Today we are casting a bronze fountain figure. This is significant for Nashville because it's the first commercial figure to be cast by the lost wax process, which, as you know, is an ancient process for producing bronze sculpture.
Tennessee Kaleidoscope today with an announcement of a service offered by the Cumberland Metals Foundry. involving the ancient and somewhat mysterious lost wax process. Recently, friends gathered at Cumberland Metals to witness the first commercial pouring, a bronze figure by Nashville sculptor Bill Ralston.
This fountain actually was commissioned by John Noel III, partially also by the Nashville Board of Realtors. What we're doing right at the moment is burning our molds, burning the wax out of the molds, preparing them to be filled with molten bronze. Now, this basically is a two-part operation. I, as the sculptor, actually created the figure, and that was done in clay, after which I made a plaster mold and did a plaster cast, which will be the master model for the piece. My founder, Billy Johnson, and I then made a rubber mold over the plaster, and into this we poured molten wax and obtained a hollow wax copy of the figure. Now this actually is what we're burning out now, the wax figure.
Your result is a bronze figure.
Yes, that's correct. I mentioned it was a two-part operation. I actually made the figure, but I could not bring this into being as bronze without the services of a foundry, and Billy and the Cumberland Metals Foundry have the expertise and are doing this now for the public, which is a good service, I think.
Cumberland Metals, owned and operated by partners Billy Johnson and Ronnie Dickson, is located at 1419 Clinton Street in Nashville, and its services are available to all sculptors, according to Billy Johnson.
There's a few individuals, Bill Doak and Russ Faxon and Frank Weatherby, but they primarily do their own work, their own sculpture and their own casting, and they will cast for people, but they would rather not. I, on the other hand, am very much interested in casting for other people, cooperating with other sculptors, helping them with the molds, and helping them understand the process so that, you know, we can produce bronze for them.
And there's really no other service like this in this area?
None in, not even in Tennessee, unless I'm mistaken. And as far as I know, this is the first time in Nashville's history that there has been a commercial foundry who, as a regular service, will cast people's bronze for them. Bill Ralston, the sculptor, and I both studied with Prior Mims at Vanderbilt, and he produced those monumental pieces near Fort Nashboro and around the Cordell Hull building. And the two, James Robertson, John Donaldson, near Fort Nashboro, were cast in Nashville, but there again, not as a regular service. It was a one-shot deal. A large foundry cooperated with Mr. Mims and produced those things. But now history is repeating itself with Prior students, and this is really the first piece I cast here at Cumberland Metals as an introduction to the public of my service.
Guests at this inaugural pouring needed no introduction to the facilities, and some came from quite a distance. Cornelia Ilkner was there from Cookville.
I'm a sculptress and painter. I had most of my training in Europe, in Germany, and I missed my opportunity to learn how to cast in bronze due to the post-war years. So now my family is raised, and I'm getting back into artistic, endeavors. So I found Billy Johnson through the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, and it was very nice. He responded, so I found the right man.
In addition to the lost wax process, Cumberland Metals offers a variety of operations. Here's co-owner Ronnie Dickson.
We melt aluminum, brass, bronze, lead, zinc, and copper. Of course, we do machine work, all types of welding, sandblasting. We polish all kind of brass. We do a lot of beds. We do just a little bit of everything.
Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and members of Associated Pathologists. This is Lynn Folk.
When I was cutting timber a long time ago, I used to worry about all that good walnut leaving the tops, you know, the stumps going to waste, and found a way to use a little bit of it.
Elvin King, who transforms those tops and stumps of trees into figures of all sorts: trays, bowls, mushrooms, turtles, beavers, geese, ducks, quail, and owls, large and small, some even as tiny as 1/2 inch in height. He does all of this with a chainsaw, and he's a popular attraction at crafts fairs and sawing exhibitions in Tennessee and also elsewhere in the country. He's been seen on national and local television, and articles concerning him have appeared in magazines and books. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope when I visited Elvin King and his family at their home in Sewanee, Tennessee. He's lived in this area his entire lifetime, except for military service, and although he's spent the past 2 decades involved in wood carving, he's also had other jobs in the area.
Me and my brother was working building houses, and I've mostly cut timber. We've got out stone, and we've dug ginseng and peeled black hall bark and just all kinds of different herbs, you know.
What is it that you do now? You've got some of your pieces in front of us here, but I want you to describe exactly what you do.
I carve them out with a chainsaw, and then we sand them and polish them and finish them up.
You start from
a block of wood. Just take a walnut block or cherry block of wood, just any kind of wood. It's good wood. Make carvings out of.
And you use a saw that you cut timber with to make these delicate carvings.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it take you a long time?
Well, it takes a long time to sand and polish them up, but it don't take long to cut them out.
Do you paint them or do anything when you finish with them?
We leave them a natural color, natural wood. Just polish them and let the grains of the wood come out in different colors, you know, walnut or cherry or different woods, you get a different color.
How did you happen to start doing this?
Just accidentally.
What do you mean accidentally?
We was working out of the house, building a house, and he had a carving out there, and my brother said, well, you could do that. So I come home at night and done one, and they said, you keep doing that. That got me started.
And how long have you been doing it?
About 21 years.
21 years. Have you any idea how many pieces you've actually done?
No, ma'am, I wouldn't. Ain't no way I'd know.
Well, how do people know about you and the things that you do?
Well, we travel all over the country to art shows and things, saw shows.
Well, in these art shows, do you find that you are unique in what you do, that there aren't many other people that...
Well, there's people do big stuff, but I hadn't saw nobody do little stuff with a saw.
We were talking a moment ago about your family, and you were saying that your wife helps you with the polishing. How about your children? Do any of your children work on this, or
well,
have they?
Several of them is carved, but they're not slowed down enough. You know, they're not got the patience. But several of them is carved out of bird or different things.
Well, it does take a lot of patience, doesn't it?
Yeah, you have to not want to get it done just in a little bit. You got to take your time.
When you do it and you think you're finished, then do you look at it in a couple of days maybe and see another little place where you want to?
Yeah, my wife sanded, and she don't like that when I cut some more on it, you know, to get a little spot that I've missed, or she get in a hurry and start sanding it before I get done with it. Then when she does, I have to go over it and take it off to make it look right.
You sell your work in craft shows and at fairs and all. Are there any galleries, either near here or somewhere else, that permanently carry your work, display?
It's not a gallery, but up at the Smokehouse Restaurant, they keep it up there all the time. And there's a place down at Winchester, and over at Chattanooga there's a place that's got it.
You said you'd appeared on television and on radio and all. Have articles been written about you and published in magazines or books?
A lot of them. I've been in Southern Living a couple of times and several different magazines.
Elvin King, woodcarver of Sewanee, Tennessee. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Cecil Brandstetter. This is Lynn Folk.